Oh boy, a reboot of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air with Will Smith himself on the team? It is almost too good to be true. Because of course it is. Just like Will Smith, The Fresh Prince has gone through a pretty radical change in tone, outright smashing some genre barriers. Yeah, let me give you a quick idea of what you're in for here. Spoilers, by the way, so skedaddle now or forever be lost. So, in the first 3 episodes, you have Will get arrested for firing a gun in public. He then proceeds to threaten a gangster with the gun, which the gangster for some reason doesn't take particularly well, and puts a hit out on Will's life. Carlton is sniffing cocaine to deal with his anxiety problems because there aren't enough black people around. I'm not joking. Will's friend gets shot through the neck. Carlton and Will get into a fist fight after Carlton almost drowns Will, and Carlton's friend puts cocaine in Will's backpack to try and get him suspended. And this is merely the hors d'oeuvres. Did I also mention that Will develops PTSD against police officers because he was arrested once? Oh, and Hillary is an ethnic African cuisine blogger that gets a chance at a huge sponsorship deal but turns around and calls the company racist. Because it's 2022. After this, she is turned down by a ton of influencer houses because apparently they see no value in black culture. Oh yes, that's a super unpopular thing in the US. She ends up posting cooking videos of herself in her underwear for the white oppressor owner of the influencer house that finally does let her in. Meanwhile, Uncle Phil is no longer a fat, strict but lovable father figure, but instead a muscled-up power lawyer running for district attorney on the moderate centrist platform of defunding the police. Whilst Aunt Viv is an ex-black artist. And I mention the black part because all she paints is black people. She is apparently very good at it. I wouldn't know. But she's so good at it, apparently, that it becomes a point of friction between her and Uncle Phil because Phil gave her money when she was a struggling artist, which now that she's a millionaire wife, she resents. Yeah, this is not the Fresh Prince you might remember. In fact, I'm not entirely sure you could get it further from the Fresh Prince. The 90s show was a comedy through and thoroughly optimistic as well. The Banks family was an upper-class black family that placed practically zero emphasis on the black part. The joke with Carlton, for example, was that he, basically, was just a cringy-ass white boy, and a funny counterpoint to Will's Philly style. Indeed, the Banks family were so just a regular Joe family that the original pitch of the story was that Will would go live with a white family. But as that was apparently a thing at the time, it was switched into the formula we know today. Meanwhile, in Bel-Air, Carlton is a sellout who's not black enough because of the hobbies he has. He also gets told it's not cool that he has never been to a black students' union meeting. Rather than being the comedic counterpoint to Will, Carlton is now a drug-addled, insecure, and abusive bastard. And instead of making the point that skin color has little to no bearing on one's likes and personality, here he's being shamed for not being racialized enough. Now, the Fresh Prince show did engage with some social and racial issues from time to time, but in a very different way. Let me show you here how the real Carlton dealt with being shamed for not being black enough.
I got this one. You think I'm a sellout. Why? Because I live in a big house or I dress a certain way? Or maybe it's because I like Barry Manilow.
He meant Barry White, y'all.
Being black isn't what I'm trying to be, it's what I am. I'm running the same race and jumping the same hurdles you are, so why are you tripping me up? You said we need to stick together, but you don't even know what that means. If you ask me, you're the real Southampton.
Things really were better back in the day, weren't they? When social or racial topics did come up, it was also in a very different sense. If anything, black on black prejudice was the main thrust of the comedy, with again Will Street style clashing with the Banks' upper class style. In other words, skin colour was a component part, sure, but far less so than the comedy of the working versus upper class dynamic. And the key again was that it was all done for the sake of comedy. They were jokes. Meanwhile, in Bel-Air, when we finally do get some of that upper versus working class conflict, it is again so damn serious. Aunt Viv gets into an argument with Mother Smith about whether or not Will should stay in Bel-Air, with all the obvious advantages it comes with, or if he should go back home to his mother in Philly. This is also shown a bit in how Will has some serious friction with his friend from Philly, who thinks that Will has gotten way too into this bougie shit. And hey, they've kind of got a point. In Fresh Prince, they kept the precise circumstances of Will's stay ambiguous, so as to not need to have this plot-ruining conversation. In Bel-Air, he is sent to LA because he fired a gun at a play yard, and then had some stereotypical gangster person dude bro rando promise to cap and smoke him, etc, etc. But in episode 5, that fellow is dead. Heavily implied that Jeffrey had him killed. Again, the light-hearted comedy just won't stop, will it? And meanwhile, Will has gotten very comfortable living in an enormous mansion with half a dozen cars with a house manager and going to a massive school with a big-name basketball team that he is now a part of instantaneously, and he becomes the hero of it as well. Indeed, Will seems to have landed on the fantasy isekai protagonist character path here, as everyone he meets, with the lone exception of Carlton, instantly loves him and thinks the world of him. Will has been in Bel-Air for all of a weekend, by the way the plot portrays it, and Aunt Viv is already talking about his future career as a politician. The plot, what little of it now remains, that Will has no more reason to stay in Bel-Air, is racing away with the speed of a cocaine-fueled Yorkshire Terrier. Every conflict, every plot is rushed on stage like it's on fire, and then stomped out in an episode or two. Remember that class conflict I was addressing? Well, as if to jackhammer home the point of the plot being in a bit of a rush, Will has now transmogrified himself into a bourgeois butterfly. The next scene, you see, is a party organized by Hillary for her influencer friends. A parade of plastic-ass they-them randos who perceive their phones as extensions of their body. And of course, the they-them person immediately sets her sight on the youngest person in the room, Ashley, who is naturally super interested in sexuality. The meme is reality. And obviously, because it's 2022, the 12-year-old girl is also gay and in love with one of her classmates. Ah yes, child sexuality. Another frequent topic in the happy-go-lucky Fresh Prince. So, beyond the fact that this show has little to nothing to do with the Fresh Prince, beyond wearing the name like a satiated cannibal might wear his dinner's ears as a festive necklace, is the show any good? Well, it is hyper-racialized and a parody of progressive talking points without a single cliche missed. Not enough black people around? Check. Microaggressions? Check. Race-changing gender politics? Check. Highly inappropriate child sexuality? Check, check. It feels like the only salient point the show makes are by pure accident. For example, I quite like the evil white influencer Bossman. He is written as the slimiest little snake imaginable, yet he makes some very good points. Hillary ends up recording her sexy chef video and then regrets it. But Massa has already edited and uploaded it, and it's gotten like 3 million views in a day or so, and earns Hillary a mountain of cash in sponsorship money. You see, it's pretty easy to be a YouTuber. If you get 3 million views, you get a few 100,000 in sponsorships that she is all too willing to embrace, of course. Capitalism, ho! But, of course, despite trotting out a few lines of body positivity and black women apparently being unfairly hypersexualized just because they drape their cleavage in cream and lick it. Oh well. Details and all that. She first says she will make more 'cause popular, but then changes her mind. And when she confronts El Slimo Whito about it, he unfortunately slaps her with her history. How she has always changed her focus or channel persona or approach whenever there is any kind of pushback. A habit that is easy to form, as he puts it, when you have never had to pay any bills. Hard to argue with that one, particularly considering what's coming up next, as Hillary apparently never read her contract, or the part about a hefty cancellation fee. Nevertheless, she walks away from the influencer house and tells Whito to kiss her ass, as she moves out of the influencer house and into a 5-star hotel bungalow with a $50,000 debt hanging over her head. Like it's nothing. Oh well, I also quite like Jazz, by the way. He's probably the most level-headed of the bunch. But even if we were to view this as just a simple coming-of-age drama series, the shit is so politically charged. Of course, least I forget, we even have a scene where the cops show up to a party at the Banks's palace and make Carlton face the wall with your fingers interlocked. Because this is the 1800s, you know, and no black person is allowed to own a house, apparently. We can't even have a nice and peaceful birthday party for Will without Will's mom and Aunt Viv getting into a big row over Will's dad, who is, according to Will's mother, a loser absentee father bum who walked out on them both. Because that's just another trope that we simply can't avoid, it seems. On the bright side, there is a spot of that class struggle dynamic there, which is resolved almost unseemly quickly, but hey, at least it was there, however briefly. And there is Carlton's struggle with drugs. Now, this is the precise opposite of the role Carlton should be playing in The Fresh Prince, but again, distancing ourselves from the show the series is named after. It's actually not a bad storyline. It's a little bit cliche, sure, but it's relatively well done, and Carlton's character actually turns out to probably be one of the best ones in the show, as he is a person with an actual struggle. He has a problem, he has a mental issue, he has his weaknesses and his insecurities. And having a character with some actual struggles in the show is refreshing in the desert wasteland that is Bel-Air. Now again, it's solved like that when Will basically looks at Carlton and go, bruh, you shouldn't do drugs. And Carlton is like, damn bruh, you're right. But hey, it's better than the reason for why he's constantly stressed out and snorting cocaine, because you see, there's too little melanin in his classmates. Again, I'm not joking. The reason why Carlton is stressed out is because there aren't enough black people around. And despite that, it's probably the least politically charged plotline. You might think that would have been on Viv, because all she wants to do is getting back into painting again, right? That's innocent enough, right? But I dare remind you, all she paints is black people. And if by some chance you forgot, there is a scene with her, the hyper-talented artist that sells painting for tens of thousands of dollars, with art enthusiasts dogging her every step for more, not to mention that she is the wife of a millionaire hotshot politician that lives in a massive-ass castle. But now, she finds herself sitting in an enormous, spacious meeting room at a prestigious institution, getting interviewed by two rich black female art experts. for a fellowship position. One she already received, by the way, before even walking through the door, and despite all of this self-evident, absurd wealth and success, she then looks at the camera and launches into a speech about how damn hard it's been to be her, a black woman, you see, because she had to compete with other aspiring artists. She even had to sell her paintings for money. The horror! I just want to reach through the screen and slap these entitled millionaires shit out. It is the absolute antithesis of the Fresh Prince, where the point was that the Banks family was just another family. They weren't a capital B black family, they were simply a family. Yet now, here, the Banks family is richer than ever before, more successful than ever before, and yet tied hand and foot to their race. The least consequential thing about them, the color of their skin, is the crux of the story. My God, I miss the 90s. And just to reinforce the position of absolute privilege this family finds itself in. Remember Hillary, with $50,000 in debts hanging over her head? Well, she doesn't want to go to her family who could pay it off like it was nothing because, well, she couldn't be said to standing on her own feet if she does that. Instead, she goes to another friend of hers who's a 10 million subscribers influencer, and just goes, you know, honey, you should twirl in that dress. And she's just like, yeah, you're right. I'll buy out your $1 million influencer house for you, Hillary, because you're just such a brilliant, independent black woman. I'm so goddamn dumb. Anywho, let me try to wrap this up here. The series ends with an art exhibition for Aunt Viv, where fancy food is served on literal gold plates in case you had somehow missed how obscenely wealthy the Banks family is in this iteration of The Fresh Prince. Then Will's dad shows up, because he's been in jail, you see. It wasn't that he walked out of them, no, he's just a criminal who assaults people. That's much better. He and Will gets into a big fight. Will storms off, and then the show just ends. Just stops, just halts hard, and they've already been bought up for 2 seasons, so, you know, it's a cliffhanger ending because they know they're getting another one. The entire show, I've labored on to this point, but this has nothing to do with The Fresh Prince. I thought initially that this would be exactly what we needed right now. A show like The Fresh Prince, a show that minimizes racial divides, that instead has Uncle Phil as the lovable fat daddy bear father figure, that puts family first, that always protects his family, and who is also rather conservative. He disciplines Will and Carlton physically whenever it is needed. They are scared of him because they know that he will pick up when they do shit wrong. When they make an error, he will scold the shit out of them because he wants them to become good, proper, moral, upstanding citizens. I don't think Uncle Phil ever scolds any of his kids here. The closest he gets is being passive-aggressive towards Carlton, and not in a lovable manner. Carlton gets his house party busted up and gets the police to show up. And Uncle Phil would walk through the door looking like a thunderstorm at that point. The police officers would go up to him and go like, sir, we had a noise complaint. And he would look at Carlton and goes, don't worry, officer, I'm going to fix this. And Carlton would creep up to the police officer, tug on his leg and go, please arrest me, I'll do anything. And that would be the funny part. Instead of shouting at him, teaching him that he's done something dumb, and then letting bygones be bygones, he drags him away to carry his bags whilst he talks with another career politician, and then just gives him a passive-aggressive lecture about how Carlton needs to know better. You've been raised in this life. You gotta be pure because the darn white people are out to get us. The Fresh Prince was a thoroughly optimistic show. It was an idealized vision of the future. It was, here's the future we want. This is where we're going. This is where we're heading. This is what we are striving for. Now, in 2022, we are further from that than ever before. And when we would have desperately actually needed the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, we get this. Is it a good show? I didn't think so. But again, you can hardly call me a neutral opinion on this, because this show is stridently, overtly, racially political. It is the opposite of everything I believe and I hope for the future. It is the exact, precise inverse of my politics. As somebody who loved The Fresh Prince, I couldn't hate this more. And it's not because of the acting. The acting is actually pretty good. It's not necessarily because of the characters. Some of them are decent. It's not because all of the plot lines are rushed to high hell, or even necessarily because it is a more dramatized version of The Fresh Prince. It is because it is such a disappointment. It is such a long step back from The Fresh Prince that, despite being more dramatized, being more realistic, has way less of a moral and civic impact than the comedy show 30 years ago. And for that, Bel-Air can rot in hell for all I care. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you all again. Have a good day.